What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 21. And thank you guys for tuning in to last week's episode. You know, even though, I gotta say, the downloads have been a little slow here lately, YouTube's been a little slower as well the last couple weeks, but to those few of you that are tuning in regularly, I really do appreciate it. I mean, you guys are the audience keeping the show together. You know what I mean? So thank you out there for your love, kindness, and support. And I hope you guys had a good weekend. Had a good week, had a good 4th of July. Got to celebrate with the family, maybe even get some games in, and kick off summer. I mean, here in the Pacific Northwest, finally, a little bit later than usual, I gotta say, summer's here. We finally have some consistent sunshine, warmer weather, and it's great. I love it. I love the sunshine. I love the warm weather, and I don't mind the heat. So I'm excited about that. And as I mentioned in the last episode, because I recorded early, and now this week I'm actually recording much later than I would like to. I'm recording on Sunday morning. Podcast will go live tomorrow. But we went on a little, mini vacay out of town, and that was fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just a nice, last minute getaway with the fam. Got around to golfing. Not as much golf as I would have liked, but, I'll take what I can get. And it was, I think, one of the cool things, to those of you that have kids out there, you'll understand this, but just seeing my son, it was like his, first real kind of mini getaway, I guess, or mini vacation. And just to see him do, all kinds of things. Like we went to, there's a little ranch out there, so he got to ride like a little pony, and we went swimming at this little water park, and I think he just had a blast, and it was just so cool to just experience that with him. So good times, and I hope you guys had some good times as well. Now remember, for the new and uninitiated, the best way to support the show is to leave a comment if you're listening on YouTube, or leave us a nice rating on the podcast platform you are consuming on. Remember, you can join me over on Locals, the gamesitechronicles.locals.com. Check that website out. It's pretty cool. A great creator platform, alternative, if you will. And I do a little few videos here and there on YouTube. This podcast obviously goes up on YouTube. And I've dabbled into the YouTube short game. And actually, the recent video I did this past week was I picked up these, I'll talk about this in a little bit in the games that we're playing, but I picked up the collector's edition of the Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak expansion. So I unboxed that in a YouTube short. So check that out. And be sure to subscribe if you'd like. You can follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And remember, new episodes of the show go live each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's show, we'll probably have a little bit of a shorter episode, I anticipate, as I'm recording this. But given the number of announcements that have happened this week, just in terms of new games coming out, some release dates, some exciting release dates at that, I thought it'd be fun. Let's just take this episode to dive into those, because there's quite a few of them that I've jotted down. So that's what I plan to do for this week's episode. And I think it'll be really fun to look in and talk about some of these games, because, man, like I said, there's quite a few. Like I've just been waking up each morning and like, oh, that's announced. Oh, that's announced. Wow, that they dropped that. That's great. I was just like, swear, like every day something new was dropped. So a news-filled week for sure. But before we get into that, let's talk about the games that we are playing. And as always, remember to write into the show and let me know what games you have been playing lately, so I can share those in this segment. Now, for me, I got quite a few games in this past week, especially being on vacation, or I guess a mini vacation, if you will. So, as I mentioned, I've been continued A Plague Tale: Innocence. I'm on chapter 15, so I'm almost done with the game here at this point. Probably 10 or 11-ish hours in. And I gotta say, I'm still enjoying the story. There's been some kind of new information I've learned now that I'm deeper into the game. I like it. It's pretty cool. The gameplay is still mostly fun. That was one of my concerns, that I was worried about, that the formula might kind of get stale or repetitive as you get kind of late in the game. But I gotta say, one of the things I enjoy about this gameplay formula is this kind of loop of basically where you enter a situation or a section of the game, and it's almost like a puzzle to try to figure out how to get past your enemies or kind of get through it from point A to point B. And you have an arsenal of different little weapons and stuff to use, and I don't know, I like this puzzle solving aspect of it. I mean, it's not literally a puzzle, but it feels like a puzzle in the sense of like, okay, do I distract the guard or do I take him out? Can I just directly sneak by? What's around me that I can use? So, like, I just find myself, I get into a situation, I kind of examine the area, figure out, okay, here's where I need to go, maybe, and then I can do this or maybe that, and I like that. That's been pretty fun to me, and I've really enjoyed that. Now, I will say though, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of different ways to do it. It seems like there's kind of maybe one or two ways to do it, so it feels more formulaic and puzzle-like in that regard. But nonetheless, I really do enjoy that aspect of it. Now, one thing I will say though is the current level I'm on, which again is pretty near the end game. I keep dying in a couple of these sections because you do have to, there's less sneaking and you kind of do, there's like, you're fighting some enemies segments, and the controllers and the aiming is just really stiff and janky. It's kind of hard. Like, you almost have to be perfect and kind of time everything just right because you don't have a lot of leeway in those moments. And so I found that a little frustrating just because the jank, I can't overcome the jank every time. So, there's that to consider. But like I said, I'm excited to finish up and see how the story wraps up and, prepare for the sequel that's coming out later this year. Next game I dove into on my trip was the Live Alive or Live Alive demo. And I mentioned on the last episode when we talked about the Nintendo Direct Mini that this was available to play. And I dove into it because I wanted to see if this game lives up to the hype that I've set myself up for in my head. And I played only about 45 minutes of it. And in the demo, you basically get to play one, kind of start the chapters for one of three characters. I started the kind of ninja section or character. And I was actually surprised at how short it was. Because once I finally kind of figured out, okay, here's where I need to go and kind of get through this first little area, that was it. That was like the end of the demo. And so I was like, oh, okay. Because I expected it to be a little long. Because I remember with like the Triangle Strategy and Octopath Traveler, like there was quite a few hours of gameplay in there that you could dive into in those demos. And so I kind of expected the same here. Now, granted, I only played one of three characters that were available, so you can obviously clearly get multiple hours. But I don't know, I was just surprised. I felt like I finally started to make progress, figure out what I needed to do, and it was over. But I liked it. It's very interesting in the sense that it combines, your traditional JRPG style of game, but they introduced some of these other kind of cool mechanics. So like in the section that I played with the ninja, there's some stealth mechanics where you can kind of sneak around and hide with the enemies and kind of get your way, through the level and where you need to go. And so I thought that was kind of cool. And I know, again, each character and story has its own kind of set of rules and mechanics. So I'm really excited to experience that. I stopped after the one character because it's like, okay, I don't need to play anymore. I like it. I want to see what's going to happen with the story. And I'm really curious to see how they tie all of these characters together in the story. So I'll wait till the game actually comes out, which comes out later this month, actually really only in a couple weeks from the time of this podcast going live. So super exciting there. And one other thing that I noticed too in the demo is that when I did encounter an enemies and go into like the battles and win, it actually keeps track of how many enemies I've killed. And I don't know what that's about. I'm not sure if there's some sort of system or like like a moral system or something like that. I don't know. So again, I'm curious to see what this game's about because even though I've dabbled in it, 45 minutes or so, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. But it was cool and it looks pretty too. I really like the kind of 2.5D almost, the Octopath or Traveler art style there. It looks really cool. So definitely excited for when that game comes out. Now, when I was on my trip, I didn't bring. I had planned to dive into Monster Hunter Rise. I had forgotten my actual physical cartridge, so I decided to dive into The Messenger. And that's a game that I picked it up on sale a while ago, and it's a game I've always because I've heard good things about it, and I've always wanted to dive into it, and just never got around to it. And so I was like, well, I've got some time here on vacay. Now, what better time than now, right? So I dove into it, and it's pretty cool so far. It's kind of that 16-bit retro inspired, platformer style game, inspired by the likes of old school Ninja Gaiden, and I've probably played approximately 3 hours or so, give or take. And first thing I got to say is the soundtrack is stellar. It's so good. Like the music is awesome. I love it. And the other thing that I think is really, really cool is the humor in the game. Like the dialogue, and you interact with certain characters that you encounter, even some of the bosses that you encounter. Like it's very self-aware humor, and it kind of makes fun of itself, makes fun of, basic game mechanics and stuff like that. I really find that enjoyable. I think it's pretty good. It's pretty funny too, and I appreciate that. In one thing I want to also say about the mechanics of the game is that there's this one jump mechanic where you can like jump, you can attack something and then jump again. And that's a pretty key mechanic to the game for some reason. It's probably because I'm getting shittier at games as I get older. But for some reason, I'm just not like consistently good at it. But nice thing is there's other ways to kind of navigate the level without using that particular mechanic so far. And then the last thing I also want to say is the boss battles are awesome. So you go through a stage. At the end, at the end of most stages, I should say, there's a boss battle, and they're awesome. Like I think I've taken down maybe 3 or 4 bosses so far. Probably about 4 bosses, yeah, and it's great. They're so fun. To me, that's like the best part of the game thus far. So I'm enjoying it. I definitely will get back to it now that I'm home. But I've dove into a couple other games that I want to finish up and put some more time into before I come back to it. But definitely worth trying and checking out, especially if you're into, those retro-inspired games. Yes, it's fantastic from what I've played. And then the last game I dove into, now that I'm home, is Monster Hunter Rise. I've been talking about this for a while on the show. I've been wanting to get back into this game. I find Monster Hunter so intriguing, just the franchise in general, and so appealing. I've always wanted to really get into it. And so in kind of preparation for the Sunbreak expansion, I decided to dive back into this one. And I haven't, I've probably put between 20 and 30 hours into the game, kind of doing a lot of dinking around, knocking off a lot of quests, not really plowing through the main story or anything like that. So I haven't even beat the main story of the original game, or the vanilla game, I guess maybe you'd call it. And I'm currently on 3-star village quests. If you've played the game, you kind of know what I'm talking about there. So I'm kind of just, right now, I'm trying to plow my way through this story, just to kind of, roll credits and then start some of the end game stuff and level up my character that way to prepare for the Sunbreak expansion. So it's good. It's I enjoyed it when it first came out. I've enjoyed my time with it. I gotta say though, the Monster Hunter games are so intimidating. And I've been watching some tip videos on YouTube and trying to, beginner tips or, like tips I wish I'd have known when I started, those types of videos. And I'm just in awe at how deep this game is. The mechanics, the play styles, the systems, etc. It's incredible just how deep it is. And it's like, that's what's intimidating about it. Even though I'm watching this video, I'm getting some good tips. I'm just like, this is insane. Like how anyone becomes an expert in these games, I have no idea because I'm just like it mind boggles. It's mind boggling. It's crazy. But I'm trying to not let that intimidate me and just kind of play the game, get through it, and just try to have fun with it. I think one of the things in why I've spent so much time and really not gotten anywhere with the game is because I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. I definitely have FOMO with video games, most video games, I should say. And then two is I get worried about like, oh, I want to make sure I have like really awesome weapons and armor. And so I'm like trying to, get the right resources and kind of just spending time doing stuff I really shouldn't be doing this early in the game. It seems like, so I don't know. So I'm trying to just settle into this game, enjoy it, and just take down some honor hunters because the gameplay loop in and of itself of, going to go hunt monsters, get some parts, rinse and repeat is fun. That is a fun gameplay loop, and so I see the appeal there. So I want to continue it, put some more time into it, and experience what this game has to offer. Now, if you're a Monster Hunter fan out there or an experienced Monster Hunter player, drop your tips. Let me know, because I just to kind of explain my situation, my intimidation level. If you have any advice for me, I'd love to hear from you. So let me know. So those are all the games that I've been playing. Quite a few this past week. That's good. That is so good. Okay. Now, let's get into some of those news items, those announcements, and all the crazy games that got announced this week. The first one I want to dive into is about Forspoken. So, Forspoken got delayed into 2023. So, it got delayed again. Now, Square Enix came out and delayed it to January 24th, 2023. And this game was originally supposed to come out May of this year. Then it got delayed till October, I think it was 25th, I believe, of 2022. And now it's being delayed again to January. And Square stated in a quote, all game elements are now complete and development is in its final polishing phase. So I'm assuming, and that's end quote there. So I'm assuming that they just want some more time to kind of polish it, make sure it's not broken, kind of smooth things out. They just want some, those additional, 4 months or so to finish that work. It's like, okay, not a big deal, but I don't know, man. I can't shake the sense that like something went wrong here with this game. It's again, game delays aren't uncommon, but something about this game just feels off to me. And I feel like maybe there was some development troubles in this game because you've now given kind of 3 different release dates. Haven't been able to hit them. Like what's going on here? What's the story? Now, the other thing about this that I didn't realize is this will be a PlayStation console exclusive for 2 years. So that's interesting. The other thing I want to note is this developer. So this game is being made by Luminous Productions, and it's their debut game. So that could be another factor here to why this game is kind of going through multiple delays and why Square is kind of like keeps pushing it out. So, maybe there's, a little bit, this is the dev's first game and, they want to get it right, get it polished, work out the kinks, that type of thing. So, there it is. I've talked about this game in the past before. I'm not super excited for it. The dialogue in every trailer we've seen is so bad. I can't get over it. It's just so cringy. And it's such a generic character, at least from what they've shown, that I'm just not into it. But I'm going to keep my eye on it because it is a PlayStation exclusive. I like PlayStation, so I want to keep my eye on it. I'll be curious how it reviews, how folks receive it, and probably watch some gameplay. Because one of the other things I was concerned about is the world kind of looked empty. And in the last trailer, they kind of threw some enemies in there and showed some combat, which the combat does look pretty cool. So, we'll see. I'll keep my eye on it. It may have potential, but man, like I said, that dialogue is so bad. Now, the next game that got some news is that Lord of the Rings game, Gollum. So they dropped a gameplay reveal trailer and included a release date. So this game is now coming out September 1st, 2022. And I didn't realize this, but the game takes place parallel to the events of the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, or the first book. And I think that's pretty cool, actually. And so one of the quotes from the developer says, and I quote, "Torn by his fractured psyche, players will have to manage both Smeagol and Golem on a journey that will take him across famous locales, revealing more about his time as a slave below the Dark Tower and his stray with the elves of Mirkwood as he interacts with iconic characters from the series." End quote. So that's kind of a little bit about the game. That sounds pretty cool. I kind of like the idea of, seeing a different side of the story during the events of Fellowship of the Ring with this character interacting with kind of beloved and known characters. I think that's a neat little premise. So the trailer they dropped is pretty short, but it shows some of the gameplay and kind of what you'll be doing. Seems very kind of stealth oriented. You're kind of sneaking around, getting from point A to point B. Doesn't seem to be a lot of combat. Like more like distracting enemies, maybe taking enemies out through various traps and things like that. Environmental traps, I should say. And so there's platforming, kind of swimming, climbing as you kind of navigate your way, through the levels. So I think it could be fun. And again, I like the idea of the parallel timelines and kind of seeing how it potentially intertwines with those events from the first book and movie. But one thing I can't get over is Gollum's art style. And I've heard this from someone else that Gollum in this game looks like Tommy Pickles from Rugrats. If you've ever seen that show as a kid, you'll know what I'm talking about back in the day. And that's all I can see now. That is all I can see when I see it, and it's so goofy. It looks funny. I can't. It's hard to get over, but he definitely looks goofy. Look him up. I'm not kidding. It's just something's off about it. I don't know. Yeah. And so the other thing too is, while kind of stealth and sneaking around can be fun, and might be fun in the game, I don't know. There's just when I'm watching this gameplay trailer and when I see this game, to me, there's just nothing really super compelling. That's like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And sorry, hopefully I got a window crack just to get some fresh air in here, and there's a big truck in my neighborhood, so hopefully. Oh yeah, it's just the mailman. Thanks, buddy. I'm trying to record a podcast here. You're right in front of my house, just making noise. It's great. Yeah. Anyways, sorry. He's driving away now. But anyways, as I was saying, I just don't think there's anything super compelling here in the game that says I want to play that. I don't know, it kind of looks blah, But when it does come out, we'll see how it does. And I'll probably watch some gameplay of it. Maybe, if someone on Twitch is streaming it, I'll pull it up just to kind of see what the game's about. And, maybe it'll be awesome. I don't know. But only time will tell. I guess we'll find out on September 1st later this year. Another game that got a new trailer and a release date is the Dialfield Chronicle. And this is that Square Enix tactical style game that they showed off in one of the state of plays earlier this year. I think it was one of their third-party state of plays on PlayStation. And I'd said I was pretty excited for this one, and I'm still excited for it. So they dropped a release date and confirmed that the game will release in Japan and the West on the same day in September 22nd. And September seems to be a pretty busy month now. There's a lot of games coming in that month. So yeah, that's exciting, I guess. So they mentioned that pre-orders are up for the game, and there's going to be a collector's edition for the game, which comes with its own board game, which is kind of neat, but not really my thing. So I don't plan on getting the collector's edition or anything for this one. And they also stated there's a trial version of the game coming ahead of its release on August 10th, which I'm very much looking forward to. So they dropped a Japanese trailer that I watched. I have no idea what's going on because there wasn't any translation. So no idea what the characters were saying, what the story was about in the trailer, but it showed off more of the gameplay, and I think it looks awesome. The one thing I didn't realize is that I guess there's a real-time element to this kind of tactical strategy game. It's not necessarily turn-based, but there is, so you kind of have to be quick about your decisions, how you move things. So I don't know, I may or may not like that, which is why I'm excited to try the trial to see if I actually do like this system and if it lives up to everything I've hoped it will be. So looking forward to that. But I think the gameplay does look pretty cool. They also showed off this kind of war room, almost looking hub where you kind of go in. You got the main characters all hover to this big like war table, and then I'm assuming this is kind of where you can pick and choose your missions and kind of see how the battles and the kind of everything's taking place in the game, the events of the world and stuff like that. So that looks pretty cool. I gotta say too that the art style is awesome. Not only like the gameplay itself with the graphics and some of the character models, but just the art style for the game, like the title screen, the box art. I'm just such a sucker for some of these anime styles, like art styles. I just think they look so cool, especially when it's in like a really cool fantasy setting, you know, along the likes of like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy. I just love it. I think it looks so cool. And it just speaks to me. This one especially just speaks to me. The characters, the way the game looks, the blue aesthetic. I dig it. I dig it a lot. So as I said, I'm super excited for this one. I definitely want to try it out and see if it lives up to everything I think it will, as I mentioned. And see if the combat clicks with me. You know, because that's going to be the key component of the game. So I'm all in for this one, for sure. Now, another game that got some release information is Valkyrie Profile. So this old PSP game, Valkyrie Profile Lenneth, is apparently being ported to PS5 and PS4 consoles. And one thing I didn't know too is that the Lenneth version is actually an enhanced version of the 2000 Valkyrie Profile game. So it's a port of a port, I guess, almost. You know what I mean? That's kind of neat there. But this comes to PlayStation alongside the new title in this series, Valkyrie Elysium, on September 29th. So if you get the digital deluxe edition of Valkyrie Elysium, then Valkyrie Profile Lenneth automatically comes with that. However, they also said it'll be sold separately, but we don't know for how much. So they've yet to announce that price point for this game separately. So I'll be honest, I have no history with these games. But I remember seeing the announcement of Valkyrie Elysium in one of that recent State of Play. And actually, funny enough, came right after I think the Battlefield Chronicle from Square Enix. And I think it looks neat. The gameplay looks kind of cool. Again, it's got that cool anime art style, so I'm intrigued by it. But I don't know. I have no experience with this game, so I don't know if I would like them. So I'm in a kind of wait and see mode with these particular games. I never played that PSP game, but they do, I gotta say they do look pretty cool. So we'll wait and see. And it's maybe down the road pickup for me. But that's another one. That's another one in September 29th. September's getting jam-packed, ladies and gentlemen. Jam-packed. After that's another game that I found on one of the PlayStation websites that actually was Push Square, I believe, that looks pretty cool. And it's called Chronicles of Two Heroes. Amaterasu's, I'm probably butchering that name. I apologize. Wrath. So Amaterasu's Wrath. So let me say that again. Chronicles of Two Heroes. Amaterasu's Wrath. That's the game. So this game comes from the developer Infinity Experience, that's a dope name. Like, that's a really good name. I like that studio name. And so it's a 16-bit style game along the likes of Ninja Gaiden and The Messenger, which we talked about The Messenger earlier. I've been playing that a little bit. And it's also a Metroidvania style game. So they dropped, a 90-second, minute and a half trailer there. And it looks kind of cool. I got to say, first and foremost, great music. It's got that old retro music. Very cool. Very, very cool. I dig it. And the trailer shows off some cool abilities and some power moves in which the character like goes into this power move and takes out like all the enemies on the screen. And there's a couple different variations of these types of power moves that they show off in the trailer. So kind of cool there. I dig it. I like what I'm seeing. And the key mechanic that they showed off and talked about is that you seamlessly switch between, two characters. Obviously, probably the two heroes in the title there. And each of those characters have different abilities to kind of help you navigate through the game. And so one of the other things I didn't realize about this in reading more about it is this is actually originally a Kickstarter project, which exceeded its goal at the beginning of July, is what they pointed out. So kind of interesting there. I've never been a big fan of those Kickstarter game projects. Like I think there's some cool ones out there, but I don't know. I just don't like the idea of chipping in money to fund a game with no guarantee that that game will ever finish and come out. So I could pitch in, say $20, $40, $60 or whatever they're asking, per person to chip in, and I may never get anything back for that money. Because there's no guarantee that they'll take my money and actually use it for what they say they're going to use it for. And that's the other, that this kind of gets into the issue of, GoFundMes and stuff like that. And I just don't like the idea of giving my money away to something where I'm not guaranteed to get what I think I'm being told I'm going to get. You know what I mean? So, yeah, this is my little soapbox about Kickstarter. But this game is slated to launch in late 2022, but they didn't give any firm release date. So we'll see. Given that it's a kind of a smaller studio, I don't know. I'm not super confident that they'll hit that. So, but we'll see. Who knows? It'll probably stealth drop, sometime later this year. Another game, and actually a couple games that we'll go into here, got announced during this Nacon presentation. I don't know. I've never heard of Nacon as a publisher or developer or anything like that, but they announced a couple games. And the first one is a Terminator survival game project that they've just started. So Nacon Studio Milan announced during their presentation that they are making a Terminator survival game. And it'll be an open world game. And they only showed off a very brief teaser where it's just a T-800, one of the Terminator robots looking at the camera. That's it. So this game is a long ways off. They stated it's in very early development, so we're not going to be seeing anything for this game for a long, long time. And I got to be honest, I hate these types of announcements. Oops, hit the mic there. I can't stand these types of announcements because, if you don't have anything to show, don't. Like, what's the point? You're going to get people hyped up that you're making a Terminator game, this licensed game, that we're not going to see for 5 years. Why? What's the point of that? I don't understand it. And I could go into a rant about that, but I'm not going to. I just don't get it. But I will say, I like the idea of this because I think this particular licensed property is ripe for video games. And we'll discuss another one here right after this that I think is also ripe for video games. But I love the idea of an open world Terminator. Now, I don't like survival games, and I don't know how they're going to do a survival aspect of it. But an open world Terminator game, I think, could work. And the way I kind of envision it is if you do it kind of like Far Cry style, where it's a first person shooter, you're dropped into this big sandbox world, and the intent of the game is obviously to take down Skynet, but as you kind of navigate this world, you're taking down Terminators, you're riding vehicles, Halo style, and you're maybe taking over different bases of Terminators, setting up bases of operations around the map, all working your way towards getting to Skynet to take them down and shut down the machines. I think that sounds awesome. I think that could be really, really cool and very compelling. Will we get that style of game? I don't know. Again, I don't. They say survival game, so I don't know what we would be getting, but I think there's potential here. So I don't know. I like the idea. I think a Far Cry style first person shooter, open world Terminator style, like Terminator game, that'd be great. I think that'd be really, really cool. So let me know what you think about that idea. And one of the other things too is if you had a shooting style, kind of fluid, almost gritty but very good, like the Wolfenstein games from Machine Games over at Bethesda, that would be epic. If you could incorporate that style of gameplay in the Wolfenstein games in a Far Cry open world setting, Terminator world, I think that would be dope. Now, another game that they announced and actually showed something off during this showcase, the Nacon showcase, is RoboCop, Rogue City. This is coming out for all current gen platforms, so PS5, Xbox Series XX, Nintendo Switch, and PC, on June 2023. So about a year away. And this is a first-person shooter, and I think it looks pretty neat. So they showed off like a 1.5 minute gameplay trailer, showed off some shooting. They got the little RoboCop scanning, like the targets, like pulled directly from the movie, and battling one of those mech droids, the ED-209s. Looked pretty cool. And one thing I will say though is in the trailer with some of the characters, there was a little jank in some of the animations, but it's got the gore, kind of got the grittiness of RoboCop, the violence I guess you'd expect from that movie, and I think it could be fun. This is another license that I think is right for video games. And a first-person shooter, I think, makes perfect sense for RoboCop. Absolutely. I love it. One of the other cool things that they announced alongside this is that the original actor from RoboCop 1 and 2, Peter Weller, is reprising his role. So he will be RoboCop doing the voicing and sharing the like of his face and all that. Because that was showed at the end of the trailer, is his face, is RoboCop. So that's pretty cool. So I feel like this has some potential. Even though it's got a little jank, you'll see it in the trailer. But I think this is another one. I think we have some potential here and could be pretty fun. One thing though, I'm not sure how relevant RoboCop is though. Like the first RoboCop came out in the mid 1980s, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. I don't know how that brand will resonate in a modern day audience. But, RoboCop is one of those franchises that kind of just seem to be popping back up every now and then. I think they did that remake movie in, what was it? I think 2016, I think. I never saw it. I kind of wanted to see it just to see if it was any good, but, I never did see it. And I know there's been some games in the past, nothing recently that I can recall, but there's been some games in the past, and I actually remember back in the day, and even though I wasn't old enough to watch them, growing up, I still did. I probably wasn't age appropriate at the time, but it is what it is. I was a fan of RoboCop. I thought it was pretty cool. I loved RoboCop, and I remember playing the RoboCop vs. Terminator game on the Super Nintendo back in the day. And I'll show my age here, I guess, a little bit, but I remember going to Blockbuster like on a Friday night with the fam, getting this game, RoboCop vs. Terminator, coming home, and I'd also get a box of Bunch of Crunch. If you know that candy, fantastic candy, by the way. Coming home and playing this game, and it's basically like this 2D platformer where you're, if I recall, you're RoboCop just taking down Terminators, and it's this ridiculous concept if you think about it, but it was a pretty cool game. So I have a little bit of history there, some nostalgia, if you will. But check out this trailer. I think it looks kind of cool and could be maybe something fun to play. Another game announcement that happened this week is they are remaking Lollipop Chainsaw. If you guys remember that game from, I think it came out originally in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And the remake is said to be coming out in 2023, so sometime next year. Now, apparently, the original creators and the main actress, I believe, so Studio 51, James Gunn, and Tara Strong, are not involved with the game. So this is being done without them, which is kind of weird. But, maybe there's some sort of licensing, or they don't want to pay these people to get them back, involved creatively. I don't know. But there's that, and I'm sure some diehard fans maybe are concerned about that. And I could see why. I could see some concern, potential concern there. And then the other thing they mentioned in the article I was reading is additionally, some of the licensed music will not make it in the remake, which, kind of a bummer. But I think with, as we remake some of these games, these licenses are going to expire, and maybe in order to kind of maintain, what was in the original game, it's going to cost you a lot more, and maybe it's just not worth it sometimes. So probably the case here. Now, this is another one. I have no experience with this game. I never played the original back in the day, so I have no love or real hate for this game. I remember seeing it and like, this concept, this idea is ridiculous. You've got this femme fatale character almost, but she's like super sexified and sexy, which I've got no problems with. Nothing wrong with that. But she got super sexy lady vibes, and she's just going around with this chainsaw, like slicing up zombies. Like, okay, it's just like this ridiculous premise. So, but apparently this game has sold approximately 1 million copies, and I know it's kind of got its cult following. And I know a lot of ladies, like girls out there, like cosplayers, this is like one of their first cosplays. Like I remember, like this is a staple cosplay character, especially, and it's got the cheerleader outfit, the big boobies, and it's nice on the eyes. We'll put it that way. So I don't know. This game might be really fun. It'd be kind of cool to track down an original copy, like physical copy of this game, and pop it in just for shits and giggles. But who knows? Maybe something to look forward to in the future. I definitely wouldn't mind watching some gameplay and kind of seeing what this game is all about when it comes out next year in 2023. Now, this next game, it got an announcement from PlayStation that is coming over to PS5 and PS4, and that is Sea of Stars. Now, I believe I've talked about this game on the podcast before, which I am very, very excited for. So the dev came out and said that it's coming to both platforms alongside the Switch and PC versions. So originally it was only slated to Switch and PC, which I do think it'd be a perfect Switch game, but now that it's coming to PlayStation, I'm kind of inclined to pick it up there. Though, man, having that game on the go would be pretty awesome. So it's still coming in 2023, and if you recall, it got pushed back earlier this year, which I was kind of bummed about. I think it was supposed to come winter of this year, 2022, or holiday 2022, I believe, but got pushed out. Kind of bummed about that. But remember, this is an old school RPG with clear influence from games like Chrono Trigger, some of those classic, JRPGs. It has an awesome art style, really cool art style, great soundtrack, and the developer Sabotage are the guys behind The Messenger. That's the third time The Messenger has come up in this podcast. This podcast episode alone. Apparently, I need to finish that game, but these guys know what they're doing. From what I've played of The Messenger, they definitely know retro style games, so I expect good things for this game. I think this game looks awesome. I cannot wait to play it. So that's coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Very excited about that. Another one that they announced alongside Sea of Stars is Inscription. This is that card-based roguelike game that originally came to PC, I think late last year, but is now coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. No release date announced, so sometime in the future, we can assume, which I'm kind of bummed about that, but I've heard this game is awesome. I haven't had it spoiled for me, and I haven't watched any streams about it, but I've heard it's a game where it's not really what you think it is. So I know you start out, you're playing this card game against this, in this kind of dark, very dark tavern against this mysterious figure. You can only see its eyes, and then weird events kind of start to unfold as you play and progress through this game. So it's had me really intrigued, but since I'm not into PC gaming, I was hoping that eventually this would get migrated so I could try it out, and it's happening. So I'm super stoked about this. I definitely want to jump in and give it a go and kind of see what this game's about, because I've heard it's awesome and it's a good like horror game. So I'm excited. Now, I will say I'm not that into like card-based games or like deck builders and stuff like that, but I'm hoping I can kind of get through that element to see what this game is about. So we'll see. Hopefully we get a release date soon, because I'm looking forward to it. Now, another big game I think a lot of people were eagerly waiting for is God of War Ragnarok. We finally have a release date, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, Sony Santa Monica came out, gave us a release date of November 9th this year. Now, that's a Wednesday, which is a little weird, but maybe it's to give folks a couple extra days leading into the first release weekend. I don't know, but it is kind of weird. And I also kind of got to say, it's kind of a bummer that PlayStation didn't take Starfield's release date of November 11th, that Friday, which I think would have made more sense and would have been just a slap in the face to Microsoft and Xbox. Maybe they didn't want to do it to kind of be respectful, but like, I don't know if your competitor would have been the same, PlayStation, so you should have done 11/11. Alongside this announcement, they released a new CG trailer. I didn't watch it. I don't need to see any more of this game. I'm sold on it. I want to go in as blind as possible. So I'm good. I don't need to see anything else. So I'm excited for the release date, though. They also announced a collector's edition, the Jotnar edition, I believe it is, that comes with a replica Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. However, it doesn't come with a physical copy of the game, and that kind of bums me out. As I mentioned, I like collecting my physical copies of games, and they did this with the Horizon Forbidden West bundle. I ended up getting that collector's edition, but it comes with a steelbook, but no actual game disc, which is kind of weird. And so with this one, I don't know. I don't know if I want to get it, because I want to own the game. So we'll see. Pre-orders go up for the collector's edition on July 15th, so coming up this next week, or the week that you were listening to this podcast. And another car is pulling into my neighborhood. That's great. And, the weird thing about this game for me is that while I was blown away by the first one and was just absolutely enamored with it, fell in love with it, especially those Valkyrie boss battles, as frustrating as they were, I really liked them. Like, it was like Dark Souls level of frustration in boss battle. It was so good. And I get some of the game criticisms. I understand some of the criticisms of the game, but I think it's an immaculate game. I think it's an amazing, worthy of all the awards it's gotten. The storytelling, the art, the music, the voice acting, it's all exceptional. So good. And from what we've seen of the sequel with Ragnarok, it's more of the same, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what we want, right? And I expect this game to be good, but I gotta say I'm not like super overexcited, over the moon for it. It's one of those games where like I know what I'm getting into. I want to play it. I'll jump in day one, but I'm not like, I wouldn't put it on, my top 5 most anticipated games list. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird. It's kind of how I feel about it. But nonetheless, we finally have a release date, November 9th of this year. So that's a big one on the PlayStation side. Now, this next one, while not a game, I wanted to include it because I think it looks freaking amazing. And that is, Nintendo announced an OLED edition for Splatoon 3. So they're going to have a Splatoon 3 OLED console. And like I said, it looks freaking amazing. I love it. It has these really cool Joy-Cons. On one of them, it goes purple to blue. The other one, it goes yellow to green, and they have some really cool artwork on it. And I think on the backs, they're actually white on the backs. So it looks really, really cool. I'm a sucker for awesome looking Joy-Cons. And then the dock it's white. It's got a big yellow Splatoon splat on it. And then it's got a bunch of like cool artwork on the dock as well. And I think this just looks amazing. I want this dang thing. I don't need it. I really don't. I got a Switch. I've got an original Switch. So I don't need this. But man, boy, do I want it. It looks... Because I know they're not going to sell those Joy-Cons. If they sold those Joy-Cons separately, I'd be fine. I would just get the Joy-Cons. But from what we can tell, those aren't going to be sold separately. And I kind of want them. So I'm tempted to pick this. But it's kind of expensive, man. Those are expensive. It's like $360. But yeah, so this comes out just ahead of the game on August 26th. And they also announced a Pro controller, which, that's cool. They did the same with Splatoon 2. However, the Splatoon 2 Joy-Cons, the green and pink ones, they sold those separately. So, hey, Nintendo, can you make those Splatoon 3 Joy-Cons separate? That would be great. So I don't have to buy a whole new console. That would be great. Also, where's the amiibos? Where are the amiibos? And one thing actually about Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, since we're talking about amiibos, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here. So Capcom, when Sunbreak was originally announced on Nintendo, there was going to be 3 new amiibos alongside it. The big new monster, and then a new Palico and Palamute. 3 new amiibos, because just like they did with the original game release, the big monster, and then Palamute and Palico. And pre-orders for that never went up in the US. They did in Japan, and I think Europe got their pre-orders up, but not in the US. And then the only thing that went up in the US was the collector's edition, which came with one of those amiibos, the big monster, and that was it. And apparently now on Capcom's website for the US, there's no mention of those other 2 amiibos. So I don't know if they're still coming. I'm wondering if Nintendo has like this shortage of maybe like in production of amiibos. And that's why they've kind of just been... Like there's even a bunch of Smash Brothers amiibos that haven't even... We're like backlog on those. They're done with all their, character updates, and we're still missing like 5 or 6, 7 amiibos in that line. So I'm kind of wondering what's going on in the amiibo front. And with Splatoon 3, I would expect amiibos because they did it with Splatoon 1 and 2. So I'd expect it with 3, but I don't know, dude. I think something's going on with the production with the amiibos, and I'm kind of bummed because I'm an avid amiibo collector here. I love them. Anywho, this console looks awesome. Check it out. And the final game that was announced this week, we finally got to see it, is the long in development Skull and Bones. And we finally have a release date, assuming they hit it, November 8th. So a day before God of War Ragnarok. So Ubisoft did this whole showcase for the game. I think it was like 45 minutes. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch the whole thing. I'm not going to spend 45 minutes watching this showcase. But I did watch one of their gameplay trailers and check that out. I think it was, 6 or 7 minutes if I recall. And so remember, guys, this game was announced way back in 2017 and has suffered delay after delay. And I talked about this in one of the earlier episodes about what happened to these games, and Skull and Bones was one of them. This had some trouble development, and I know it was like rebooted and restarted and is now coming back as this kind of live service game. But essentially what they showed off is you play as, captain of your ship. You take on contracts, you collect resources, items, and you sail the seas. You can attack merchant ships, you can search for treasure, you can even raid forts, you can play solo or with other players. There's a PvP elements in there. And there's also several different systems at play here. So, there's obviously player customization in terms of your gear, your aesthetic. You manage your crew, and you actually have to keep them happy, otherwise they will turn on you. And you have kind of this infamy leveling system. So there's kind of a lot going on here, and maybe some depth. And so the thing I'm seeing out there is it's inevitable, but it's getting a lot of comparisons to Sea of Thieves. And so, I'm sure that's going to happen. I think it'll be interesting to see how those comparisons play out when the game actually launches. And there's obviously plenty of similarities, right? Both pirate games, both sail the seas, both combat, treasure hunting, etc. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. I think it looks cool. It's not really a day one purchase for me because I thought it would be more story driven, which is I think is how it originally started, but now they've turned it more into live service. But I expected maybe some sort of story that you could play through single player. I'm not getting vibes that exists. So it kind of seems to me it's like one of those games where you're taking on these contracts, you're just doing stuff to kind of level up and beef up your character, and that's the point of the game rather than to like play through a story. So not really a game for me, but something maybe I'll consider down the road, or if it turns out to be this awesome experience when it launches, then okay, color me intrigued. Because, the graphics look cool. I think the art style's fine. I think there's something here, but just not really my style of game. That was one of the reasons why I never got into Sea of Thieves either, because that's clearly a live service game that, no end goal, so to speak. So, a game that's very demanding of your time, which I have limited. So, when it comes to games like that. So, I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you think about that game. And if you're interested in it, because man, that's a long time coming. So those are all the announcements. There was a ton of announcements this week, and I pulled all those just from this week. So a ton of game announcements. And you know what? I know after the Xbox showcase, some, the big Starfield delay, Redfall delay, and even, Forspoken delay, it kind of seemed like, oh, maybe this fall is going to be kind of light on games, but there's still a lot of games coming out. And I think we're going to have a healthy, meaty fall. And I think there's going to be something there for everyone. If you're sitting there, if you're one of those folks that say, like, there's just nothing really to play, like, what do you play? Like, what are you looking at here, dude? Like, there's so many games out there. Like, not only do I have a massive backlog, but like, I just look at some of these games and like, half of these games that we talked about are coming out in September. Like, September is a beefy month. The other major one I can think of is Saints Row is also coming out. I think that looks cool. Like, there are just so many games coming out all the time throughout the rest of the year that, yeah, they're not the big, first party exclusives with the exception of, a handful of games maybe, but there are some really, really big games and some really cool looking games coming out. So I think there's like a little something for everyone if you just look in the right spot. So I don't know. I think we've got an exciting rest of summer, fall, and early part of winter throughout the rest of this year to look forward to. Some great games coming out. A lot of announcements this week. Yeah, that'll do it for this week's show, going over these announcements. I think we're going to eat. We as gamers, I think, live in a pretty exciting time where lots to play, lots of games coming out, lots of releases. And as I mentioned, games are more accessible and cheaper than they've ever been before. So we gamers are eating good over here. So let me know what you guys think about these game announcements. Which games stick out to you? Are you excited for any of these games? Let me know down in the comments below, right into the show. Hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. I appreciate your love, kindness, and support. Remember, best way you can support the show, leave me a comment. Drop us a rating. Leave us favorable ratings on the podcast platform you're listening on. Very much helps the show out, helps people find it, puts us into the algorithms, and just does the good things. So I would appreciate that. And also, new episodes of the show go live each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you again, and until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.